Jim the Bullet Bailey was one of those larger-than-life personalities, a big bear of a guy with a big beard and a strong Australian accent. His day job involved being towed at high speeds behind race cars, wearing titanium pads on his knees and elbows to produce showers of sparks. Yes, it's the early 1980s, and the stuntman craze is in full swing. And anyone who's got an idea for a crazy stunt and the balls to try it is getting their face on TV shows like That's Amazing and Australia's own version, That's Incredible. Jim Bailey began his daredevil career by doing a sort of human torpedo stunt. A high-powered car would tear down a dragster track with Jim being towed behind. Jim wore a fireproof suit for protection and he had helmets, boots and gloves. Attached to his body were titanium blocks, which produced showers of sparks as he was dragged at ever-increasing speed down the tarmac. The only problem with Jim's show was that it was a one-trick pony. There's only so many times that the audience can see you being dragged along behind the car before it starts to get old. Now Jim knew this, and so he began adding in extra dangers to the show to keep it fresh. For example, instead of simply being dragged behind the car, Jim devised a new twist where he would be dragged alongside the speeding car and then release himself at the crucial moment in order to skid through a blazing tunnel of burning straw. Having emerged at the other end, bursting out from the flames, Jim would roll around on the floor for a bit as his teammates rushed up towards him with fire extinguishers before getting to his feet and waving to the relieved and excited crowd. As always though, you had to keep upping the ante in order to keep the thrills fresh, and every time you upped the ante, it got a little bit more dangerous. I read that in one show, Jim, having been dragged at high speed behind the car, purposely let go and flung himself into a flaming wall to give the crowd that extra wow factor. Now I don't know if that's true, I certainly couldn't find any footage of that stunt, but you can see where this is going. Now Jim had already appeared twice on the Australian TV show That's Incredible, but in order to keep those TV slots coming, Jim would have to keep adding more and more dangerous twists to his act. Jim's fatal day with destiny came on April 1st, 1981, whilst he was filming a new stunt in which he would be suspended beneath a small aircraft as it came into land. He would be dragged down the runway, whereupon he would release himself and skid and slide down the runway, sparks flying, as the plane lifted off again. Jim and his team were in Hawaii and had rented out a private airstrip in order to film this new stunt. Now, in order for this to work properly, Jim had to be suspended beneath the fuselage of the plane for the entire trip, right from the takeoff and circling the airstrip to the final touchdown, where Jim could then disengage his support belt and do his thing, skidding on his front, down the runway, with his trademark sparks flying up all around him. Needless to say, there were any number of ways that this could go horribly wrong. For starters, Jim's belt could fail to disengage, or if the pilot didn't touch down correctly, Jim could get tangled up in the landing gear or knocked unconscious. However, as dangerous as this stunt was, this blurry footage shows that Jim actually pulled the stunt off successfully at least once. However, having reviewed the film, Jim, although pleased with the stunt, felt that the footage lacked some oomph, and he wanted to go again, this time with the camera mounted under the wing to get some close-up shots of him hanging under the plane as it touched down. However, what he actually ended up filming was his own tragic demise. Jim attaches himself once again to the underside of the light aircraft for the next go-around. Jim's helmet mic picks up the stuntman's voice as he shouts, "Start it up, take it away." He yells excitedly as the plane gathers speed, and he shouts again, "Take it up, get it up." Once airborne, you can see that Jim is held in position by just a single clip attached to a harness around his middle, and Jim's hands are holding onto the bar between the wheels. It's hard to tell with this poor quality footage, but that clip looks pretty flimsy to me. Also, there's no safety line as a backup, as of course in order for the stunt to work, Jim has to separate completely from the plane once it touches down. So that flimsy looking clip is literally the only thing keeping him suspended under the plane. Now, as he starts to gain altitude and the plane begins to circle to turn back to the runway, the clip holding his waist belt seems to start stretching out, and then without any warning, it either snaps or releases too soon. Jim is left hanging onto the bar between the wheels, but he can't keep his grip. He manages to hold on for just a few seconds, but then his hands slip. His helmet mic, still recording, is disconnected, cutting off his scream as he falls to the ground. Jim fell 500 feet to his death. Paramedics were called to that scene, but Jim was pronounced dead. He almost certainly died on impact, and hopefully he didn't feel anything. After the tragedy, news reporters reached out to Australia's ABC TV network, who hosted That's Incredible, for their comment, but ABC said that they didn't know anything about it. They were filming a new series of That's Incredible, but the shooting for it hadn't even started yet. It seems that Jim was doing this stunt entirely off his own back, probably hoping to sell the footage to ABC upon his return to Australia. But unfortunately for Jim, that return trip to Australia was a trip that he would never make.